Hello, I'm Chrissy Seaton. Welcome back to my YouTube channel, My Noahide Family. Today I'm going to introduce the first part of a three-part series, and this is by very special request from a very special Noahide, and it is on the topic and the explanation of Psalm 139. Now, if you are lucky enough to have one of these exact copies of the Psalms, which are available through, they would be available through all Jewish bookshops, then you can sort of read along with me. But this is authentic writings, and also it gives very good explanations in this version, in this copy that I have, describing each of the phrases or each of the verses, whichever the case may be. So we get a very good broad scope of what the meaning of this special psalm is, 139. And I've called the title of this, How God is Familiar with All Our Ways. And it's an eye-opener. I know it's probably things we have thought about and had given some credence to, but this psalm really helps us understand that before we open our mouth and utter a sentence, Hashem knows everything. So let's start off with the first 6 verses, and what I will do is I will read the actual verse and then I'll refer to the explanations of those verses, and we will start now. So, Psalm 139, first verse. For the conductor by David, a psalm. O Hashem, you have scrutinized me and you know. That's the first verse. So here's the explanation. Ezra describes this psalm as an extraordinary lesson on the ways of God. In the 5 books of Tehillim, meaning Psalms, no other psalm examines the roots and reasons of creation so intimately. Rabbi Yehuda, quoted in the Midrash, attributes the authorship of this psalm to Adam. When God fashioned him from clay and dust, he moulded much more than the shape of a simple man. The outline of all human history was etched into the flesh and bone of Adam, the father of all mankind. The destiny of his descendants was ordained at the dawn of creation. All subsequent historical events conformed to a comprehensive primeval pattern, the original divine plan. This psalm captures the overwhelming sense of awe produced by pondering God's absolute omnipotence and omnipotence. There is no escape from the eternal scheme, and God is aware of a person's thoughts, yet the man of faith follows life's path willingly, for he travels with God towards a goal of everlasting glory. So that's the introduction, really, to this psalm. Now, the explanation for the first verse is as follows. For the conductor by David, a psalm. Rabbi Yehuda states that the main ideas of this psalm were articulated by Adam. Later, David expressed Adam's teachings in the beautiful words of this composition, meaning this psalm. Hazar Zion observed that the title conductor or director is most appropriate for Adam himself, because he was created to guide all segments of creation and to orchestrate them into a harmonious blend. Had he not sinned, meaning Adam, he would indeed have exercised mastery over the entire world. Continues on, Adam perceived the innermost character of every living thing and, in giving it a name, designated its role in this world. O Hashem, you have scrutinized me and you know. In the preceding chapter, the psalmist introduced the concept of divine omnipotence, saying, though Hashem is exalted, he notes the lowly. This emphasizes that God structured Adam's every particle so that he and his descendants would perform according to the divine intention. Perhaps no man understands this as well as David, whose entire life was an endless series of battles, crises, and tests. Thus, this outstanding descendant of Adam declared, Hashem, you have scrutinized me, even though you already knew the outcome of the test. Interesting, isn't it? All right, we'll go on to verse 2 now. You know my sitting down and my rising up. You understand my thoughts from afar. So, the explanation here. For you know my sitting down and my rising up. Now, Targum renders, you know when I will sit down serenely to study Torah and when I will rise up passionately to wage war. David declares, later I was rising up to flee from the revolt of my son Absalom. Even then I did not complain against you. Rather, I composed a hymn of love and praise called A Song of David as he fled from Absalom, his son. Now, you understand my thoughts from afar. This translation follows Ezra and Radak, who perceive as cognate with thought. The psalmist declares, God knows my thoughts from afar, long before I myself know my thoughts. So in other words, God knows exactly what we're thinking even before the thought comes into our mind. God already knows what I am destined to think, for he is the creator and preserver of my thought processes. Now that's a pretty profound thing to get our head around, isn't it? Rashi identifies a friend beloved. This is an emphasis here. The verse would then be rendered, from afar your understanding befriends me. Even when man drifts from the path of sanctity, God seeks ways to draw him close. For the goal of history is to bring man even closer to God. Interesting. Verse number 3, I'll read. You encompass my path and my repose. It says, you shall make a crown of gold all around. Here it means that God's knowledge encompasses every phase of human endeavour and perceives it from every possible vantage point. Goes on and says, Radak explains that this refers to man's path or routine by day, and that which is the Targum term for to lie down, adverts to man's nightly repose. In other words, when he goes to sleep at night. You are familiar with all my ways. Now, Rashi, Ezra, and Radak comment that literally means you are accustomed to, as in Numbers chapter 22, verse 30, have I been accustomed to treat you this way? So there's lots of references and things you can go and look up as well. Then we're going on now and we're going to read verse 4. Now verse 4 says, "For the word is not yet on my tongue. Behold, Hashem, you know it all." Let's think about that. Before I open my mouth, Hashem already knows. And very often what happens, we put our foot in it, don't we? Okay, so the explanation for verse 4. "For the word is not yet on my tongue. Even as I am collecting my thoughts, you already know what I am about to say. Moreover, without the help of God, it would be impossible to utter any coherent speech. As in Proverbs chapter 16, verse 1 teaches, to man belongs the arrangements of thoughts in his heart. But from Hashem comes the tongue's reply." Okay. "Behold, Hashem, you knew it all. Hashem, you knew every detail of my life long before I was born, as you told Jeremiah. Before I formed you in the mother's womb," mother's belly it says here literally, "I knew you. Moreover, there was not a song, not a psalm, not a casual conversation that was not known to you long in advance. For behold, Hashem, you knew it all." Something to think about, isn't that, eh? Amazing. So let's go on and read verse 5. "Back and front you have restricted me, and you have laid your hand upon me." So let's see what the explanation is there. Now, verse 5, "Back and front you have restricted me." Now the translation follows that who understands, as in besiege, surround. Now Radak explains as this is cognate with shape, back and front you fashioned me. Very good. "And you have laid your hand upon me." Now, in describing Adam's virtually limitless spiritual capacity, the Talmud says metaphorically describes Adam as extending from the earth to the heavens, from one end of the earth to the other. There was no facet of creation from the most mundane to the most sublime that Adam did not encompass. Nothing was hidden from him. However, after Adam sinned, God laid his hand upon him and diminished his stature, restricted his scope. Interesting. Interesting how this is all put. We can grasp this from the explanations. Now, verse 6 I will read. "Knowledge is beyond me. Exalted, I am incapable of it." I'll just read, that's a short verse. "Knowledge is beyond me. Exalted, I am incapable of it." So let's see what verse 6 explanation is. Now, knowing is beyond me. God is omnipotent. He foresees and knows everything about man, yet man himself has no inkling of his own future, which remains a wonder and a mystery to him. Well, of course it does. What's the future hold for me? Even more wondrous is the divine paradox. Everything is foreseen by God, yet man has freedom of choice. Remember that. Man has freedom of choice. To reconcile this apparent contradiction is a feat beyond man's mental grasp. Exalted, I am incapable of it. Ramban attempts to solve the paradox of God's foreknowledge and man's free will by noting that God's knowledge is identical with his essence. It is beyond human comprehension. Not only does the Almighty know more than we, but also his way of knowing and the quality and scope of his comprehensions are in another dimension, entirely beyond our grasp. That's as far as we're going today, which is part 1 of 3. It's hard to follow that up, isn't it? It's hard to top it. You just sit back and you think. It's so true. But often it's there in front of us, we know, but until it's spoken to us or until someone points it out to us or we read it, as in this case, it's hard for us to grasp the entirety without getting confused and losing our place, so to speak. So that I will leave that now for today, and there'll be 2 more sections we'll do, each of 6 verses. Now, can I also say, please remember to subscribe to the channel, because also you get notifications when there's a new video put up, and especially in this case where there'll be 3 separate sections, and you'll get notified when they're published, and go and have a look at them. Feel free to leave a comment, and in the meantime, please take care and God bless.